So the next question here is, when's Marvel?
Marvel's happening in 2018. It's a side tournament, I guess. Marvel just, we know it was on a slippery slope and it had a lot of competition going forward, and it just kind of fizzled. But I think it didn't make the cut this year.
First and foremost, I would like to express my apologies to you viewers for taking too long with this video, if only because I do have a lot of footages in this video to take, as well as other agendas in my life. So yeah, we're due for another retrospective video, folks, and this time, today's subject matter is Marvel vs. Capcom. And no, your eyes aren't deceiving you. I really meant it when I said that I will also include Tatsunoko vs. Capcom for reasons that I'll be also explaining in this video.
I'm sure everyone, including non-fighting game fans, have heard about the most recent news this past month regarding about the future of the franchise, especially when one of them just cemented its own fate. Oh, we will get to that game soon. The Marvel vs. Capcom series is very huge in the fighting game genre, seeing many of Marvel's iconic heroes and villains going against familiar characters of Capcom's universe, trying to prove dominance. It was such an awesome concept that would later spawn future crossovers like Capcom vs. SNK, Project Cross Zone, even though it's an RPG, and many others that would follow suit. Players compete in battle using characters with unique moves and special attacks by using a combination of joystick movements and button presses. Players must execute various moves to damage their opponent and deplete their HP, or alternatively, have the most cumulative HP when the timer runs out. Each successive Marvel vs. Capcom installment has added, removed, or altered gameplay elements over the course of the series' history, which either benefits players or force gamers to learn something completely new in order to adjust to it.
Now, I know many of your viewers are expecting me to talk about the series' downfall, but before we get to it, let's take a trip back to the early 90s when Capcom and Marvel caused the start of a beautiful relationship.
Capcom was dominating the gaming industry from the late 80s with Mega Man, all the way to the early 90s with the success of Street Fighter II, which jump-started the fighting game craze and garnered many gamers that would line up in the arcades for the hype of it all. Capcom's partnership with Marvel Comics began in 1993 with the release of The Punisher, an arcade beat-em-up based on the comic book series of the same name, and you get to play as either the Punisher or Nick Fury, the latter of which is the old Nick Fury before the ultimate Nick Fury that we came to know and like. It was a really fun arcade game, beating up thugs, ninjas, mafiosos, and cyborgs en route to the Kingpin. Pick up weapons, throw them, shoot at them. So satisfying. It even got a port on the Sega Genesis. Capcom decided on making a fighting game using Marvel licensed characters, and with the license obtained, they created X-Men Children of the Atom with the use of Capcom's CP System 2 arcade hardware, the most frequently used circuit board that Capcom was using throughout the 90s. It is the first fighting game produced by Capcom using characters under license from Marvel Comics, and it was released around the time of the early to mid-90s when the popular X-Men animated series was being aired on TV, and the game features voice actors from the series reprising their roles. The game's plot is based on the Fatal Attraction story from the comics, which I never read but researched some parts of it, and players control one of the X-Men or their enemies face each other off in the game in best of 3 one-on-one fighting matches before battling Juggernaut and then Magneto himself. The gameplay has much in common with Capcom's past titles such as Super Street Fighter II Turbo and Darkstalkers, in which Children of the Atom adds a combo system that features long combos that can be even performed in mid-air, and follows the same fighting game controls and conventions as the two aforementioned games. The player can choose between one of 6 X-Men members or 4 of their enemies for a total of 10 selectable characters, and after selecting a character, the player can choose between manual or automatic blocking. By selecting to automatically block attacks, some features will not be available during gameplay. You then proceed to compete in a series of best 2 out of 3 one-on-one matches, while Juggernaut and Magneto are unplayable, and you'll see why. The player has an X power gauge similar to the Super Combo gauge in Super Street Fighter II Turbo that builds as the player performs regular or special moves. It begins at level 1 and reaches level 2 when it becomes half full, followed by an aura that will surround the player's character until it becomes full and reaches max level. Players can then perform an X ability which consumes a small portion of the X power gauge, or Hyper X, which consumes a greater portion of the same gauge. Breaking one's fall from a throw or performing a counter throw will consume a portion of the X power gauge when performed. Other features included in X-Men include super jumps, the ability to roll away or towards an opponent after falling, the ability to determine the aim of a projectile move, such as Cyclops' optic blasts, or the ability to pursue an opponent after performing a throwing attack for additional attacks. X-Men also introduced multi-tiered fighting environments in which the ground would crumble and characters would fall into lower parts of the level. Such examples would be the stages of Colossus or Spiral. The single-player mode consists of 6 computer-controlled opponents, followed by Juggernaut and Magneto. Unlike some games, the player cannot play against a clone of their own character. And no, your eyes are not deceiving you. Akuma from Street Fighter is playable in this game after pressing certain inputs in the character select screen, and can be your 6th computer opponent if certain conditions are met. Capcom's contract with Marvel stipulated that Capcom include a character from the Street Fighter franchise in the game, so the developers included Akuma as a secret character. While I love the fast-paced gameplay of connecting combos and gravity-defying moves, especially with Wolverine, even on easy mode, the game is still freaking hard. What I'm playing is the Sega Saturn version, which while it controls well like the arcade, some animation frames are missing. But the real troublesome part is that even on easy, the game likes to accelerate the difficulty and damage output way too fast. This is noticeable against Juggernaut, as I ended up getting my butt kicked so fast, not only with his sheer size and strength, but combine that with him powering himself up, and picking up a cast iron I-beam makes up for a deadlier combination. As for Magneto, he really loves to fly and spam aerial sonic booms on my face, followed by his magnetic shockwave. Seriously, I couldn't get a clear pattern on him. SNK Playmore Boss Syndrome isn't just limited to just that company, folks. Although Magneto did have a cool entrance. Overall, a good attempt. While the controls and presentation are nice, it can't be denied that the overall game looks very unbalanced and the difficulty likes to be random at times. Thankfully, Capcom would realize this as well. In 1996, Marvel Superheroes was released in the arcades and ported to consoles 2 years later, and its overall plot is loosely based on the Infinity Gauntlet storyline, in which the game focuses on the heroes and villains battling each other for the Infinity Gems, with Thanos as the main antagonist, who plots to use the Infinity Gems to take over the universe. And hey, it's an important plot device in the upcoming Avengers Infinity War. The game has 10 playable characters, with Doctor Doom and Thanos being unplayable until the console releases like the Saturn version that I'm playing at, would they become playable. Returning from X-Men are Wolverine, Psylocke, the now nerfed Juggernaut, and Magneto. Other characters include Spider-Man, Iron Man, the Incredible Hulk, Captain America, Shuma-Gorath from Doctor Strange, and Blackheart from Ghost Rider. The gameplay from X-Men is implemented into Marvel superheroes, only more refined. The Super Gauge functions normally now like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and the controls also have a smoother feel to it than X-Men. A unique mechanic in the game are the 6 Infinity Gems: Power, Time, Space, Reality, Soul, and Mind. These gems can be earned by obtaining them from opponents during arcade mode, or by fulfilling certain criteria during versus mode, such as getting the first hit. By using these gems in battle, fighters receive enhanced effects for a short amount of time, with Power being self-explanatory, Soul healing HP, Reality gives out extra attacks from normal moves, Space increases defense, Mind fills up your Super Gauge, and Time increases movement speed. Certain fighters will receive extra benefits whilst using certain gems. Such examples would be Spider-Man using the Power Gem, creating a mirroring doppelganger of himself that deal extra damage to his enemy, or Juggernaut using the Space Gem to make himself impossible to flinch from any attack. As for the secret characters, Dr. Doom has a really good assortment of attacks, especially his Photon Shock and Molecular Shields. As for Thanos, once you reach him, he'll automatically steal your gems from the start of the match. Normally, just a special move is enough to steal a gem, but it takes a connected super move for Thanos to lose a gem. There's a reason why Thanos is broken. If you're playing as him, he has 6 supers that all you have to do is input the Shoryuken command in reverse, followed by any button, and just like Computer Thanos, he'll only lose a gem by super moves. There's also a third hidden character who, like Akuma, is also a Capcom character. Anita, the little girl with dark powers who follows Donovan Bane in his quest in Darkstalkers. Speaking of Akuma, he does make a cameo appearance in one of her moves, and her super move, called Love for You, is perhaps the most overpowered super in the game as it deals about 70% of damage, and its block damage is even overpowered than any of Iceman's attacks in X-Men. Anita mostly remains as a Japanese console and arcade exclusive character until she was made playable in the US via the Marvel vs. Capcom Origins in 2012, a compilation of both Marvel superheroes and Marvel vs. Capcom 1, which sadly has been delisted from PlayStation Network and Xbox Live. More on that later. Between X-Men and Marvel, this one stands out as the better game. The gem system is created as such so that nobody can be too overpowered, and the refined gameplay engine makes for a rock-solid experience that laid the groundwork for the next chapter of Capcom creating a dream match that got everyone hyped to play. It was the mid to late 90s. I was still living in Asia during my elementary years, and whenever a weekend comes about, my folks would take me to this place called Funtime Pizza, which is a good knockoff of Chuck E. Cheese's. It was definitely a great hangout spot. Well, creepy animatronics aside, their pizzas were so good, we often ordered 2 wholes, and when all said and done, my folks and I would play some machines to score some prize tickets, but what really sold me would be the various arcade machines they set up shop for. In fact, it was from that very place that attracted teenagers and above to hang out, as it was also in those years that I was introduced to an oversaturation of fighting game titles. Be it King of Fighters 96 through 98, Street Fighter EX, the very first Street Fighter 3, which I had sunk so much of my tokens into because of how beautiful it was firsthand, Samurai Shodown 4, as well as the horrible Samurai Shodown 64 for the short-lived Hyper Neo Geo circuit board, which I hope to talk about in the future if I can find some smooth emulation for it. And the one-team game that got myself and everyone's attention, X-Men vs. Street Fighter. As the first installment in the Marvel vs. Capcom series as a whole, X-Men vs. Street Fighter has players control various characters to do battle in one-on-one combat, attempting to knock the opponent out by depleting their HP, and it features dual character selection and tag team battles. Rather than your standard best-of-3 round format, matches consist of a single round, as players select 2 characters at the beginning of a match, each with their own HP bar. Players control one character at a time while the other awaits off-screen. Your frontline character can tag in the off-screen character at any time during the fight by pressing both heavy attacks, and during that time, your used character will also slowly recover some HP while the current character is fighting for you, and you can tag back in when you feel confident to bring that character back. If one character loses all HP, then the character will automatically come into play and the match continues until both characters on either team are defeated. If the timer runs out before either team is knocked out, then the player with the most remaining HP will be declared the winner. The game features a roster of 17 characters, with 8 on the X-Men side and 9 on the Street Fighter side, the latter of which have sprites reused from Street Fighter Alpha 2 and its Gold update. And in order to create a level playing field between the cast of Street Fighter and X-Men, the Street Fighter characters were reimagined with highly exaggerated versions of their special moves. Such an example would be Ryu launching a Hadouken beam that fills the entire screen. It's worth noting that the music is actually really good, with nice remixes of the Street Fighter characters, with my favorite themes being from Ken, Nash, and Bison. And the stage designs look well drawn for the time, and you can see some characters in the background. Returning from X-Men Children of the Atom is the Super Jump and Air combos, and from Marvel Superheroes is the revamped Super Combo Gauge, now called Hyper Combo Gauge, which fills up upon performing moves and receiving damage. Players can expand their meter to perform various special techniques such as the Hyper Combo, which unleashes high amounts of damage and inputting them is made simple. A good example is Ryu's Shinku Hadouken input being just 1/4 circle motion forward plus any 2 punches rather than the traditional Street Fighter method. And at the cost of 2 levels, you can perform crossover combination where both characters use their hyper combos simultaneously, simply by inputting 1/4 circle motion forward plus both heavy attacks. The arcade and all ports of the game have an arcade and versus mode. In versus mode, 2 players can fight against each other locally. In arcade mode, the player goes through 6 AI-controlled teams en route to your boss battle against Apocalypse, also from X-Men, who is actually easy to fight. Just try to avoid his drill arm and destroy his laser-shooting satellites. Finally, you'll fight 1-on-1 against your tag partner and then you get your ending. I will say right now that if you want a good experience with the game, import the Sega Saturn version and modify your console, as the Saturn version is more arcade perfect than the PS1 version due to the PS1's technical limitations on handling 2D games, which the Saturn excelled better at. The downside of the Saturn version, however, is that it's Japan exclusive due to the Saturn's low sales in the North American market. The overall presentation, at least the arcade and Saturn port, is very well received and very favorable with both players and critics alike, due to the over-the-top action exceeding more than Marvel Superheroes did, what with the game's great technical performance, animation, and sound quality. But for Capcom, it's only just the beginning. In 1997, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter is released, and what makes it stand out for the time was the attraction mode shown here, complete with an outspoken announcer hyping the game. So outspoken, I was actually expecting someone from WWE announcing the game.
Are you ready, true believers? Capcom and Marvel have joined forces once again to bring you Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter! What spectacular action! Don't miss out on the enjoyment of a lifetime! Amazing fantasies! Don't miss the most amazing tag team fighting game ever! Are you ready for a new challenger? Victory! Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter!
There, you see what I mean? The overall gameplay and aesthetics remain similar to its predecessor, with each player selecting 2 characters to compete in a one-on-one tag team fight, attempting to defeat the opposing team. The game replaces most of the X-Men cast from the previous installment with characters from other Marvel properties. The most notable gameplay change in Marvel vs. Street Fighter is the addition of the variable assist. By pressing both medium attack buttons while grounded, the player can summon their off-screen character to perform a special move without changing their currently controlled character, opening new possibilities for combos during battle and greatly expanding the role of the secondary character. This mechanic would be used in later games in the franchise. Arcade mode still functions the same way, with one new change. You still go through 6 teams before reaching Apocalypse, who is still not that hard, and as long as you follow my advice against him, he'll still be easy to take down. The 8th and final stage, however, rather than your own partner, you instead face a machine clone of Akuma called Cyber Akuma, or Mech Goki in Japan, and he's straight up broken. But then final bosses are meant to be that way at the time, so that's a given. Like the last game, you have a roster of 17 characters, 8 from Marvel and 9 from Street Fighter, but in the Japanese arcade and console ports, you have a special character that doesn't represent neither one named Norimaru, an original character created and owned by Japanese comedian Noritake Kinashi, and he fights like a weirdo as one of his supers is actually throwing so much junk, similar to Anita's Love for You in Marvel Superheroes, but less effective on block damage. Due to licensing issues involving the character, Norimaru is not available in any international releases of the game, although there exists a hack on the PS1 North American version that allows his availability. In addition to the 17 immediately playable characters, the roster also contains 6 secret characters with 3 more added on the console versions. The secret characters are palette swaps of existing characters with different moveset properties such as Dark Sakura and Mecha Zangief, as well as recreations of US Agent and Mephisto based on Captain America and Blackheart's sprites and moves respectively. Nash is also playable under a different name called Shadow, and both Apocalypse and Cyber Akuma are playable in the Saturn and PS1 versions, although the methods to unlock Cyber Akuma differs between the two consoles. The designs of the stages are mostly the same, with just a few different use of color and adding more characters to the backgrounds. And the music is mostly hit or miss, as all Street Fighter characters have all new different themes, and all Marvel characters, with the exception of Captain America, Spider-Man, Shumagorath, and Omega Red, have all new themes as well. Even Hulk for some reason. My favorite theme is from Wolverine. Like the last game, the game was also well received and considered to be more balanced and polished than the last, and it's great to also try out the secret characters just for fun. Given how great the game is, Capcom continues to have another idea, one that would change the fighting game genre for years to come.
I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for a ride.
It's 1998, the very year I started settling here in Houston, Texas, and it's also the year that the crossover battle continues with Marvel vs. Capcom Clash of Superheroes, the third entry in the series and the first to bear the Marvel vs. Capcom name. As the title implies, now you have Marvel characters now clashing with different characters from the Capcom universe. You have 15 characters, 7 Marvel and 8 Capcom, with new faces like Mega Man, Strider Hiryu, Captain Commando, or Morrigan from Darkstalkers, along with 6 secret characters, 5 that are palette swaps for some characters with some original moves, and Mega Man's sister Roll, who is straight up useless in this game, and the methods of unlocking them differ between the arcade and console ports. All of the mechanics used in the last game have been retained, with one exception. Gone from Marvel vs. Street Fighter is Variable Assist, which allows the player to summon their off-screen teammate to perform a special attack, in favor of the new guest character's special partner system. Upon selecting your team, you will be randomly selected one of 20 special partners, 22 on consoles, before a match, and it changes with each match. The special partner can be summoned the same way as the last game, however they only have limited uses depending on what you are given. They can range from Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins, Thor, Jubilee, or in the console versions, Nash or Sentinel. Marvel vs. Capcom introduces a new technique called the Variable Cross, or Hero Team Attack. By inputting quarter circle backward and both heavy attacks while at level 3, the player can attack their opponent with both characters simultaneously for a limited time. In addition, the player is given unlimited use of the Hyper Combo Gauge, a colored meter towards the bottom of the screen which allows the player to perform special techniques, allowing them to pull out multiple Hyper Combos, moves which deliver heavy damage to the opponent in quick succession. The roster may be small, but for the time, I personally don't mind it that much as it gave me a chance to experiment with each of them. I still have fun with Wolverine, and it's great to see Gambit back. It's cool to see Mega Man with his assortment of weapons and a giant form that he can become. It's cool to see someone like Captain Commando join the roster after his own arcade game. And Ryu in this game is rather interesting in that, at the cost of one Hyper Combo Gauge, he can change modes to either himself, Ken, or his Satsui no Hado form, which I frequently use. You go through 7 stages until the final fight with Onslaught, Magneto's evil memories taking physical form and took possession of both Charles Xavier's mind and body. He loves to spam a giant laser beam on your face, use the Juggernaut Head Crush, summon Sentinels, and occasionally summon an evil clone of a character while he's regenerating HP. In this first form, I mostly try to anticipate when he'll fire his laser, enough for me to get out of dodge or use Mega Man's sights to my advantage. However, unlike Apocalypse, Onslaught has a second form, but I have no problem taking him down as both Ryu and Mega Man have aerial supers. FYI, Onslaught is also unlockable, but only on consoles. The design of the stages are much better this time around, with some representing a specific brand, like fighting atop the Daily Bugle, seeing a robot factory with Dr. Wily in the background, or fighting inside a concert with Raptor from Darkstalkers performing on stage. As for the music, the Marvel characters all have new theme songs and they're full of energy, and the Capcom characters now have respective theme songs from their games, with Captain Commando and Jin Saotome from Cyberbot's Full Metal Madness having their own original tracks, but sound just as good. I will say that the Dreamcast controller is not a good choice for this title, and I probably could have invested on either an arcade stick or a Saturn to Dreamcast controller adapter. I did own the PS1 version years ago, and while it still suffered the same limitations as the past games, I'm happy to see that the game retained both the gameplay speed and graphical integrity. My overall reception of the game is positive, and if I feel like going back for nostalgic reasons, I'll be booting up this game at any time. However, nothing would prepare us for what Capcom has in store for us 2 years later. It's the year 2000, and Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is released, and many consider this for its time to be the be-all, end-all fighting game of legend, and it's still widely enjoyed to this day. It was also one of the many reasons to own a Dreamcast, as many titles from Capcom are pure arcade perfect ports, and this game is no exception to the rule. As you can see in this attract mode, this game has boosted the roster to 56 playable characters, outnumbering any King of Fighters title for the time, and many of them are fresh new faces, such as Cyclops' son from the future Cable, Hayato from Star Gladiator, Tron Bonne from Mega Man Legends, and for some reason, there are 2 Wolverines in this game, one with the bone claws and one with the familiar adamantium claws. There's also a cactus creature named Amingo, a female humanoid Sansan, a descendant of the Sansan character from 1984, and an original Capcom character named Ruby Heart, serving as the game's protagonist, who is on a mission to find a treasure orb said to be worth a fortune. Initially, only 24 characters are available while the other 36 have to be unlocked. The arcade version includes an experience system which unlocks hidden characters after a certain number of experience points are earned. This system was removed in the console version in favor of the Secret Factor menu, where the player can buy hidden characters, stage backgrounds, and color schemes using points earned throughout normal play. But as you can see, I very much got everything but the different colors for all the characters. Unlike past games, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 was released in the arcades using the new Sega Naomi arcade platform, which was high-definition arcade quality for the time, long before 720 to 4K resolution was even invented. Visually speaking, it is the first Marvel vs. Capcom game to combine 2D sprites with 3D backgrounds, which is visually stunning for the time as well. The current generation equivalents would be Guilty Gear Xrd, BlazBlue, and DBZ Fighters. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 now has players select a team of 3 characters to compete in one-on-one battles, and the game introduces a more refined version of the variable system used in past games, which allows players to tag in other team members at any point during the match. The game features a modified version of the 6-button control scheme from the last game, where instead of 6 attack buttons separated as 3 pairs of light, medium, and attack strength punches and kicks, the game utilizes a setup of 2 pairs of light and heavy attacks and 2 assist buttons. The tag assist mechanic from Marvel vs. Street Fighter has been re-implemented and got a tune-up to make use of the game's 2 tag assist buttons. Each playable character possesses 3 different types of assists, denoted by the Greek letters Alpha, Beta, and Gamma, which can range from projectile attacks, to anti-air, to healing moves. And some, but not all, assist types will also determine the crossover combination attack they'll perform. Bear in mind that assist characters receive extra damage if struck by the opponent. Similar to prior installments, as characters deal or receive damage, a colored meter at the bottom of the screen known as the Hyper Combo Gauge will gradually fill, up to 5 levels this time around. When the meter is full, the player can use it to perform several special techniques such as hyper combos, powerful attacks that deal heavy damage. Another new mechanic is delayed hyper combos, which allows the player to execute multiple hyper combos consecutively by inputting one hyper combo, followed by another input to instantly tag another character to execute another hyper move, and so forth. Crossover combination has been revamped by simply pressing the 2 tag assist buttons simultaneously at the cost of 3 or more levels of gauge, summon the player's entire team to use their hyper combos simultaneously. Finally, another new gameplay mechanic called Snapback is executed by inputting quarter circle motion forward plus a specific tag assist button at the cost of 1 level gauge, which forces the opponent to switch characters. Useful if you want to force out the character that is trying to regain back some HP. When playing arcade mode, you go through 7 different AI teams on your way to fighting the game's boss, Abyss, an evil entity that emerges out of the artifact that Ruby Heart was looking for. He sports 3 different forms: his armored form, his humanoid form, and then his giant form. Despite the large damage output, he's still pathetic to fight, especially if by any chance that Cable is your frontline character, and all you need to do is just keep spamming his pistol and Viper beams on his face. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 received positive reviews for its frantic gameplay style, detailed backdrops and visuals, and an enormous cast of playable characters. Possibly the only drawback will be the soundtrack itself, as most of the tracks are jazz-themed, and the one track that sticks out the most is the song Take You For a Ride, which is used for the character select screen. The PlayStation 3 and 360 versions of the game are praised for having the option to support custom soundtracks. Sadly, those ports have been delisted from each other's respective stores, which I'll get into later. Nevertheless, the game has instantly become such a timeless classic. People still enjoy and coming back to this game even to this day, and will go down in legend as the greatest 2D fighter of all time. While there are more fighting games coming out in this generation, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 will no doubt in everyone's mind be considered to be the best there is at what it can do, and what it does is very nice.
You can push yourself to the limit, be strong and jump with me. You can fly above the rainbow with me, close your eyes and just believe.
Years after Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and Capcom vs. SNK's releases, Capcom is very much burned out on making fighting games, with the exception of creating the ultimately unnecessary Capcom Fighting Evolution, and they were very much on the ropes as their Marvel license has expired over time. During that period, we see Capcom releasing the Street Fighter Anniversary Collection, which has both Hyper Street Fighter 2 and Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, which is a good distraction given how good Street Fighter 3 Third Strike was and still is to this day, and it wasn't until Street Fighter 4 was introduced in July 2008. And while it was a fresh new start for Capcom, it wasn't enough for those that wanted more fast-paced action, so Capcom needed to do some experiment with something. Enter Tatsunoko Production, a company known for producing many anime shows in the 1960s, with the most well-known show, Speed Racer. Tatsunoko Production asked Capcom to develop a game with Tatsunoko characters, and in-company discussions at Capcom about the idea started in mid-2006. Capcom producer Ryota Nitsuma, who previously worked on Street Fighter 4, was interested in producing a fighting game and agreed with other Capcom employees that Tatsunoko's characters would be better suited for a versus game than a Street Fighter game, gaining assistance from the company Eighting, the creators of the Bloody Roar series, resulting in Capcom's first crossover fighting game in 7 years, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom Cross Generation of Heroes, which released in arcades and later on the N Company's W console in Japan only during that time.
Just to reiterate the disclaimer from the top of the show, I will not say the name of the company or the names of their games published by them, out of fear that just like in Angry Joe's video back from January of this past year, I'm going to refrain myself from saying those names, if only because I'm trying to prevent the company from going Super Saiyan 8 crazy just from the mere mention of their company name or their published games alone. Don't get me wrong, I actually love the company, their games and their consoles, but I just don't like their current practices, and you know exactly what I mean. Well then, moving on.
The arcade cabinet system board was proprietary hardware based on the W console, and is the first Capcom-designed Versus installment to be fully rendered in 3D, but keeping the overall gameplay in 2D. And on December 2008, the game was then ported to the W console, and there are 2 versions of this game: Tatsunoko vs. Capcom Cross Generation of Heroes and Ultimate All-Stars. Like the Marvel games, you control characters with different attacks and fighting styles and engage in combat to deplete the opposition's HP. The gameplay is set in a 2.5D environment where the characters are rendered in 3-dimensional graphics, but their movements are restricted to a 2-dimensional plane. They may only move left, right, upward, and through the air. Each player may select a team of 2 characters and can switch between them during combat. Alternatively, players may select one of 2 giant characters who cannot be played as part of the team. When characters switch, the incoming one performs a special attack upon entry, and the previous one can regenerate HP. Characters not in play may be used to assist and to perform powerful team moves as the Marvel games do, and the conditions for victory are the same as the past. The original arcade release had 18 characters, which is then raised to 22 on the home release, and then up to 26 on the Ultimate All-Stars version. And what I find interesting is Capcom giving other franchises a chance, and as mentioned, there are only 2 giant characters that cannot form a team at all. Aside from your typical mainstays like Ryu, Chun-Li, and Morrigan, the game has Alex from Street Fighter 3, Batsu from Rival Schools, another good Capcom fighter, Soki from Onimusha 4, although I prefer Samanosuke over him, Legends Mega Man, and I'm sad that Mega Man Legends 3 is forever cancelled, Roll, who is more useful here than in MVC 1 and 2, the PTX-48 from Lost Planet, Saki Omakane from Quiz the Nairo Dreams, Capcom's Japan-only quiz and dating sim game, and appears as an assist character in MVC 1, Beautiful Joe, Frank West from Dead Rising, who has a Mega Man beam, and one of the best characters in the game, Zero. No introductions needed on him. I'm familiar with only a few of the Tatsunoko characters as I've watched some of their shows when they were aired as syndicated TV shows in the past, such as Ken the Eagle, June the Swan, and Joe the Condor from Science Ninja Team Gatchaman, Neo-Human Kashan, which was rumored that Capcom got their idea for Mega Man in the first place aside from Astro Boy, and the genie named Hakushan Daimao, who is only playable on cross-generation of heroes and was replaced completely by Yatterman No. 2 in the Ultimate All-Stars version due to unspecified licensing issues, unpopularity with players, and the game's status as a localization of the North American version, which I think the licensing reason is a stupid reason if one were to consider that Capcom is trying to gain a license from Tatsunoko as a whole. So there's no reason for them to exclude him from the roster, not to mention when I played the original cross-generation at a convention a decade past, I actually enjoyed playing the character, as not only is he powerful, but also his moves are actually quite funny, and I enjoyed the character for the nostalgia factor as I've seen the whole series during my grade school years. In fact, going off topic a little bit, Hakushan Daimao is a genie who resides in this specific bottle, but unlike any other genie bottles, Hakushan is summoned when he hears someone sneezing within close proximity of the bottle, and can grant any wish possible, albeit to lesser effect. He also has a daughter named Akubi, who can be summoned similarly to Hakushan, only by yawning. Hakushan is deeply obsessed with hamburgers, and his full motion ending in cross-generation has him stay true to character. And should the same person sneezes again, he is then sent back to the bottle and any wish granted will be gone in an instant. Yeah, I've actually enjoyed watching Hakushan Daimao, Gatchaman, and Kashan back in those years, and I hope to find sites that replace them. Other characters like Yatterman 1 and 2, Hurricane Polymar, and this giant transformer Gold Lighten, I've yet to watch their shows. Although it would have been cool if they actually put the Samurai Pizza Cats in the roster. I will say that in my opinion, Capcom could replace Gold Lighten with someone better. In this case, they could have had Ava 1 into the game. Even though Evangelion is Gainax property, Tatsunoko also co-produced the show, so it would have made sense for it to be the giant for the Tatsunoko side. The game has a simplified control scheme consisting of 4 buttons, light, medium, and heavy attacks, and a partner button. Players use controller directional inputs in conjunction with any attack button to perform extra basic attacks. An example would be a standard heavy attack can become a sweep when the down input is added. Both standard and extra basic attacks can be strung together to perform combos. As for the partner button, pressing it summons your partner to perform attack assist like in the previous game. And to tag your partner in, press the partner button while holding back on the D-pad. Each character has unique universal techniques, special attacks that are more powerful than normal moves, that require complex control inputs like unleashing a hyper move. Returning from Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is Delay Hyper Combo, where you input one hyper combo of a character, then input another to tag your partner in for another hyper combo. As for crossover combination, it is now executed by immediately pressing the partner button the very second you input your level 1 hyper combo, though I don't use it very often, and it takes up 3 levels of your gauge despite the game being 2-on-2. Other common universal techniques include the Baro Cancel, executed by pressing any attack button plus the partner button, sacrificing some of the red portion of a character's HP, but allows players to extend combos and deal more damage. The Mega Crash is performed by pressing all 4 buttons in unison at the cost of 2 levels of your hyper combo gauge. Doing so creates a temporary barrier around the character to knock back opponents just in case you're trapped in a combo, or if you need to escape from a giant character's special throw. The controls overall are very smooth and very easy to connect combos, as the game's turbo speed is just right for this kind of game, and the hyper combos are actually fun to unleash, such as Soki going to Onimusha mode and absorb souls like you would in the actual game for him to unleash his level 3 super. And there are some things you would see that don't make any sense. Take Alex vs Gold Lighten for example. Here's Alex unleashing Hyper Bomb on regular sized opponents. Against Gold Lighten, however, physics? What's that? Like the previous Marvel games, you go through 7 primary matches before the final boss. In this case, 6 teams and 1 giant. Once that's done, you are then sent to the final fight against Yami, the main antagonist of the Capcom game Okami. In Okami, Yami has 5 forms, but in this game, Yami only uses 3 of his 5 forms in sequence, beginning with his first form, which has the ability to drain all your hyper combo gauge. His 4th form in round 2, which is not that hard, and his final form, which unless you have 2 or more hyper gauges for a Mega Crash, don't get caught by his hand. What makes the 2 versions different is how the game ends. In Cross Generation, at least the console version, has a character's still shot endings followed by a full motion ending, as evidenced by Beautiful Joe and Hakusho Daimao. In Ultimate All-Stars, it's just nothing but still shots, which is lame, but at least there are many Capcom cameos in the shots. I mean, heck, Cross Generation has a better intro video, whereas Ultimate All-Stars treats it more like it was Marvel vs Street Fighter's opening, minus the crazy announcer. Another difference is the sound presentation. In Cross Generation, each character has their own theme song playing that pertains to either game or show they came from, which is nice, although Soki's theme is exactly ripped from Onimusha 4, but his transformation music sounded better in this game than his own game. In Ultimate All-Stars, all the music are original pieces, with no theme songs for each character, and the version has more stages to play in. Personally, I'm not a fan of Ultimate All-Stars soundtrack except 2 songs that stand out, those being The Burning Wasteland, and the Orbital Cargo Bay, which sounds so similar to the song Better Off Alone by Alice DJ. Speaking of stages, they are designed very well to represent either a show or a game, such as the Galactor Base from Gatchaman, the Willamette Parkview Mall from Dead Rising, or the Jessel Shaft from Mega Man Legends. The overall presentation of the game is really great, and it is a breath of fresh air from Capcom. I enjoy playing the characters in the game, the visuals are designed nicely for a W console game, and the controls made combos so fun to execute. Both versions are definitely worth having in your collection. The gameplay is very fun and responsive. It gave Nitsuma and company an idea, one that would bring back hyper fighting enthusiasts on their feet again, and it all starts by bringing back a very familiar name. In February 2011, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Fate of Two Worlds, was released worldwide, and it's only on consoles now, seeing as how the arcade scene is very much becoming niche at this point. The game was first publicly announced at Capcom's Captivate press show in Hawaii in April 2010. However, unbeknownst to everyone, MVC3 was actually in development around the time that Tatsunoko vs. Capcom came out, when Capcom reacquired the Marvel license after a period of legal issues that placed the series on hold for nearly a decade. And Ryota Nitsuma once again takes helm as producer for the game, and allied once again with A-Ting to making the game.
Now I can understand that the Tatsunoko portion of the show is actually quite long, but it must be understood that the overall gameplay of Tatsunoko would serve as a foundation for Marvel vs. Capcom 3, only fine-tuning it to be much better than Tatsunoko, and the game will also create better graphical fidelity with the use of empty framework that was used in Resident Evil 5 years prior.
In fact, Capcom wanted to maximize gameplay depth and minimize complexity when designing Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and make it so that it would reach out to longtime fans of the series, while at the same time expanding their user base to those familiar with the characters, as well as urge to reach out to new players also stemmed from Marvel's recent success in the Hollywood film industry with the Captain America and Iron Man movies. It is evidenced by the opening cinematic with characters fighting on the ground and in the air, complete with very stunning visuals and fight choreography, with the duel between Dante and Deadpool being the most engaging. Not to mention, the many character trailers I've seen leading to the game's release did live up to the hype that I just had to get it. Heck, I even bought a special edition for the game, complete with a nice steelbook case with excellent artwork both front and back, as well as a 12-page prologue comic book done by Frank Thierry with a code for 2 free DLC characters at the end of it. As for the gameplay, returning from MVC2 is 3-on-3 combat, choosing 3 characters in a team that can be swapped at any time during a match. The overall mechanics and aesthetics are actually copy and pasted from Tatsunoko vs. Capcom with some modifications. Like Tatsunoko, the game uses 3D character models as opposed to 2D sprites, though gameplay remains restricted to 2 dimensions, allowing characters to move only backward, forward, or straight up into the air. The game has 6 buttons to use, but the control scheme is more of a modified Tatsunoko control scheme. In this case, you still have the 3 simple attack buttons of varying strength, only now it has a launcher attack as the 4th attack button, so there's no need to press down forward and heavy attack anymore like in Tatsunoko. And you now have 2 partner buttons, which simply tapping one will have a partner assist you in battle, or holding that button will cause that character to be tagged in. The mechanics from past games return, such as delaying a hyper combo to another. The crossover combination attack is back to how it was in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and you can perform snapback to force another character out on the field. The game includes a new exchange mechanic, which is used to launch opponents into the air, swap characters while performing combos, and slam the opponent into the ground. However, you can perform Team Aerial Counter by pressing the same direction as your opponent plus the launcher attack, or special as it is called, to free yourself from an aerial rave. Another new mechanic introduced is the X Factor, which offers increased damage, speed, and health regeneration for a short period of time. It can be activated by players once per match and can also be used to extend combos. The duration and intensity of the X Factor is dependent on the number of active characters in the player's team. As the player loses characters, X Factor lasts longer and grants higher damage boost. The Sparking Blast used in DBZ Fighters was actually inspired by Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Counting the DLC, the game has 38 characters, 17 on each side, and just like Tatsunoko, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 gave us more interesting characters to experiment with, such as in the Capcom side, you have Chris, Wesker, and the returning Jill Valentine having moves based off Resident Evil 5, Dante and Trish from Devil May Cry, 2 more Darkstalkers, Felicia and Cienko, Nathan Spencer from that not-so-good Bionic Commando reboot, Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins, Amaterasu from Okami, Mayor Mike Hagar, who hasn't been playable since that awful Final Fight Revenge, and returning from Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, Beautiful Joe and Zero, the latter who still remains top tier. Or on the Marvel side, fresh newcomers are added in, such as the Merc with the Mouth himself, Deadpool joining the cast, Super Skrull, another enemy of the Fantastic Four is playable, the Imitator Taskmaster joins in, another Doctor Strange enemy, Dormammu, Wolverine's clone, X-23, who is one of my favorite female characters in the game, or Jean Grey taking out the Phoenix name. Even though Marvel told Capcom directions on how to go about designing Marvel's characters, in response, the Marvel vs. Capcom team would try to preserve their essence from their source material and see how they could siphon it into an interesting fighting game character. Such as ensuring that Deadpool still remains a fourth wall breaking machine while maintaining his deadly mercenary status, or Arthur giving him movements and attack patterns as a nod to his game, since both of these characters are first playable in this installment.
Hey! Yeah, you! I'm down here busting my ass while you sit on yours watching me jump around? How is that fair?
It's also worth noting that starting with Marvel vs. Capcom 3 would have characters of varying stamina, as some characters can take some punishment, while others can be taken out easily if you don't plan your strategy carefully. Such example is that out of all the characters, Jean Grey is the glass cannon, in that she's versatile on many moves, but in terms of stamina, if she gets trapped in a combo, it wouldn't take long for her to get killed right away. All the characters handle really well, and the gameplay speed is balanced in such a way that I can perform button combos easily, even more so than in Tatsunoko. And the fast-paced action of performing tag aerial raves brings joy to my eyes on how satisfying it is to do so. Arcade mode has you going through 6 different teams until the final match to save the Earth from another iconic villain, Galactus, who will first summon cosmic clones of the game's villains before taking on Galactus himself. Don't think for a second that he's easy, because most of the time, carelessness can cost you, as he can perform a snapback on his own, and he can try to crush you with both hands, shoot powerful lasers, and as evidence here, his hyper overhead smash can obliterate your character in just one hit. Even if your character is at maximum HP and X Factor, it can bypass blocking as well. Afterwards, whoever defeated Galactus will get that character's ending. Some are good and some are senseless, but just like Tatsunoko, there will be some cameos as well. I like the overall presentation of the game, with many stages that would pertain to both universes, such as Catalog's Island from Mega Man Legends, the first stage in Ghosts and Goblins, Thor's home of Asgard, or the more revamped Daily Bugle. It's really nice to see the 3D models and effects in these stages. It's also worth noting that whenever you win a match, aside from a typical win pose, a nice touch is the transitioning to multiple panels followed by a page turn effect, as if you were reading an actual comic book. Even some of the word designs are based off of onomatopoeias in a comic book. As for sound presentation, you can change the background music to either classic or dynamic, the latter of which all stages will have just generic stage music like in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Classic style has characters having their theme songs play out, and I actually like the songs remixed into the game, such as the first stage for Ghosts and Goblins for Arthur's theme, Dante's theme song in Devil May Cry 3, Zero's theme in Mega Man X2, or Wolverine's Marvel vs. Capcom 1 theme, remixed with a guitar riff that sounds almost like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Less than a year after its release, Capcom announced an updated version of the game titled Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. It was released in November 2011 and featured additional characters, stages, and gameplay tweaks.
Which got everyone wondering at first, why release the same game twice with new additions instead of having it as DLC to save some money, labor, and cash?
Originally, Capcom wanted to leave Marvel vs. Capcom 3 as it is, with plans to release more downloadable content as it progresses with time. However, development schedule during that time was delayed in the wake of the 2011 earthquake and tsunami disaster in Japan's Tohoku region, along with some health issues from staff. So instead, Niitsuma and company decided to release the proposed DLC, along with the rebalanced gameplay and other additions, as a separate installment, resulting in this very update that we have here. As an update, the game utilizes largely identical gameplay mechanics to the original. However, both the aerial combat and X-Factor systems introduced in the original have received adjustments in terms of damage output and effectiveness upon execution. In addition to the gameplay modifications and new playable characters, the game features several aesthetic changes such as a redesigned heads-up display, character select, and stage select screens. Some of the returning characters also receive some new moves, such as Wolverine's new move that you just keep tapping an attack button, and many of the characters have adjustments to their stamina, for better or worse, the latter happening to Sentinel because it's more broken than the original, and less said about Jean Grey's further nerfing of her stamina the better. In addition to the usual modes, a new mode is introduced in Ultimate called Heroes and Heralds, a free downloadable single-player and multiplayer team-based mode where players earn new abilities with upgrade cards, customize their characters with new powers, and compete in factions as either the heroes defending the Earth or as one of Galactus' heralds. The ability cards, which feature various characters from both universes, unlock special power-ups such as invisibility and projectile invincibility for use during mode-specific combat. Up to 3 different cards may be equipped at once, with more than 100 cards available to collect. Its later equivalent would be the gem system in Street Fighter Cross Tekken. 12 more characters have been added into the roster, with the Marvel side having Hawkeye, Doctor Strange, Nova, Iron Fist, Ghost Rider, and Rocket, while on the Capcom side, Red Arimer, aka Firebrand from Ghosts and Goblins, the returning Frank West, only without his Mega Buster Hyper from Tatsunoko, Strider Hiryu, after trying to regain the license for him, Nemesis from Resident Evil 3, Dante's twin Virgil, and oddly enough, the Ace Attorney himself, Phoenix Wright. Only about a few new characters are fun to play, with Virgil and Strange being kick butt of all of them, while Nemesis is too sluggish to play, and as for Phoenix Wright, he's a real oddball in that he attacks with papers, attacks with words, and sneezes on his opponent as a launcher. However, he's the only one with the most broken level 3 hyper in the game, aptly named Ace Attorney. Wright has to find 3 pieces of evidence that make sense to a murder case, change to a different detective mode, attack and connect with objection to activate turnabout mode, and enter the input for the hyper. Not only does he have maximum invincibility frames, but it's also unblockable and can connect with your opponent from any and all distances, and it's possible to one-shot your opponent while on level 3 X Factor, except against Thor on level 3 X Factor, sadly. Despite some changes and more, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Ultimate are fun to play and are welcome additions to your fighting game collection. The overall presentations are nice, it's great to see good balanced hyper fighting, nice use of the comic book motif, and the soundtrack is good. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and Ultimate are definitely worth the investment. Previously, on December 13, 2013, Capcom announced that the digital versions of Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 and its DLC would be removed from online platforms toward the end of the month, following the apparent expiration of Capcom's licensing contracts with Marvel Comics. The game was pulled from both Xbox Live and PlayStation Network along with Marvel vs. Capcom Origins weeks later, but around December 13, 2016, the game was re-released digitally on the PlayStation 4 and on the Xbox One on March this past year, with every single DLC placed in, so if you haven't played it yet, now's your chance. The re-release of Ultimate was done to coincide with the announcement of what appears to be the next chapter in the series, and it wasn't until December 3, 2016, we then learned that the license has been renewed, and a new trailer of a Marvel vs. Capcom game got everyone, including myself, hype at first. And then it came out. Well, we reached this far, so let's get this finished.
This is the worst thing that no one should ever have to play! It's a freaking disaster! What the heck is going on here? The story is not great, the system is not good. What? How? Why? And so we've come to the most recent entry in the series, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. When it was first shown at PlayStation Experience this past year, to be fair, the trailer looked promising at first, seeing Captain Marvel and Iron Man take on Ryu and newcomer Mega Man X after so much demand on needing him, seeing the crazy effects that you would see in current Marvel movies, and the overall design in the trailer looks stunning.
Infinite was announced during Sony's PlayStation Experience event in December 2016. Capcom initially lost the use of the Marvel license in 2012 after Disney decided to focus on self-publishing its own gaming titles. However, Capcom was able to reacquire the license after Disney dissolved its console publishing division. Infinite was designed to be more accessible than previous Marvel vs. Capcom games, resulting in several changes to the series' fundamental mechanics. The game also features a large emphasis on storytelling, with the series' first cinematic story mode. But what really got my attention is the word infinite, pertaining to the return of using the Infinity Gems, or stones in this game, which hasn't been used since Marvel Superheroes in 1996.
It got me excited at first, but as months passed by, it got me a little bit more skeptical about it. Needless to say, what I considered hype suddenly turned into utter disgust.
I'm going to get the brass tacks out of the way now and say that this is the worst entry in the series, bar none. Every trailer that follows suit, it made me question what in the world the Marvel vs. Capcom team was thinking this past year. It's even worse on the fact that Ryota Nitsuma is not involved in the project, as someone else instead took point, making the game look so bland in comparison. I mean, sure, there's the fact that Street Fighter V was also on that same boat until Capcom listened to customer feedback on how incomplete the game was, that they would actually listen to the fans and add in so much content in order for Capcom to regain consumer interest, resulting in Street Fighter V Arcade Edition, and it worked out so well. I'm sure I'll get so much backlash and be instantly accused of jumping to a conclusion, but once I played Infinite enough times, the negativity of the game can be solely justified. Right now, I'll mention my top 10 things I considered very wrong with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite.
Public relations at its blatant worst. Now, I know the term "the customer is always right" can be a two-way gray area street, somewhat. But everyone can agree that in any and all businesses, whether it be a regular or your own dream career, One thing you do not want to do is tick off the customer and brush them off.
This is exactly what a PR representative did in an interview when asked about missing characters for Infinite, stating, end quote, "If you were to actually think about it, these characters are just functions. They're just doing things. Magneto, case in point, is a favorite because he has an 8-way dash and is really fast, right? Well, guess what? Nova can do the same thing. Captain Marvel can do the same thing. Ultron can do the same thing. But honestly, that doesn't mean they're the same overall. Magneto can do more than just fly. He's a freaking master of magnetism, for goodness sakes. Shoot, the whole point of a crossover game is choosing the characters not only to practice with, but also to have the feel of being that character using our imaginations. You want to make good characters accessible in your game if you wish to win the respect of the fans. But when it comes to making hype, PR is about listening to your fans, not neglecting them, darn it. A copy and pasted uneven roster. I will also include DLC on it as well. As you can see on the character select screen, the vast majority of characters are just ripped straight out of Marvel vs. Capcom 3, with only 10.5 being new. Now why 10.5? Thanos, though a veteran character on his own right, has his own moveset, but because of the storyline, he doesn't have the Infinity Gauntlet. Venom still retains his own moves, but is controlled on Infinite's control scheme. I still find it stupid that Black Panther, Sigma, and Monster Hunter are relegated as DLC when they could have been available in the first place. Also, I said uneven roster because when DLC is announced, we would expect 3 characters from each side. You could argue the fact that some past Marvel vs. Capcom games also have an uneven roster, but back then, we didn't know any better, much less mind it. But Infinite was made in 2017, you have 36 characters overall, with Marvel having 1 character too many, which leads me to my next point. Some characters are a waste of space. In past tournaments of Marvel vs. Capcom 3, I've seen many players playing as either Albert Wesker or Virgil, but instead, Nemesis and Spencer, who are not exactly popular, made it to Infinite over them, as if Spencer's rebooted game and himself weren't bad enough already. The Marvel side isn't any better. In fact, if it were up to me, I would have replaced Nova with either Daredevil, Punisher, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, or just bring back Iron Fist. As for the DLC on the Marvel side, I'll go hardcore and say that Natasha Romanoff is a waste of space between the 4 of them.
That's not to say that Black Widow sucks in general. In fact, she is a very capable fighter all her own and won the respect of her fellow Avengers, and is actually eye candy to many men. Though I kinda like X-23 a lot better. It's just that you already have Bucky Barnes in the roster using weapon-based combat. Romanoff's moves in Infinite are similar to that of Jill Valentine. You might as well just bring back Jill Valentine into the roster. It may still be a shameless copy and paste job, but at least the roster will be even.
The Marvel vs. Capcom team and Disney's misunderstanding of license differences. Looking again at the character roster, you notice that the vast majority of the Marvel cast is comprised of just Avengers. Not one X-Men character, not even Wolverine. It was done in which Disney believed that with the success of the Avengers movies, they would demand for pushing more Avengers into it by omitting X-Men in order to sell more, considering that 20th Century Fox still at the time owned movie rights to X-Men, which includes Deadpool. In fact, this is something that YouTube user Mugen Lord has stated, and he's right about his statement that while it's true that Fox still has movie rights to X-Men, they don't have comic book rights in general. Disney does, and the Marvel vs. Capcom team could have capitalized on that. Again, key words. 20th Century Fox equals movie production rights. Disney and Marvel equals comic book rights. Big differences in licensing. In my opinion, however, if they wanted to add X-Men characters to settle the whole dispute, Disney could have just bought the rights out of Fox to end it all. What I'm about to say may not make any sense, but just bear with me, aight? Given that Marvel and Lucasfilms answered to Disney now, what Disney could have done is that after all the revenue generated from the successes of both Avengers Age of Ultron and Star Wars Episode 7, they could have used that revenue to buy out the movie rights of other Marvel properties and sell it once and for all. Instead, they're just pushing only the Marvel Cinematic Universe, omitting the X-Men and Fantastic Four, and sell other characters as DLC in hopes that they would profit from it. but the plan just backfired on them and realized it too late to resolve the issues. Yeah, they sure did a good job on disrespecting the fans, and they deserve what's coming to them. But more on that statement later. A stupid story with some unexplained inconsistencies. At the time of this retrospective video, Avengers Infinity War will be premiered on April 25 worldwide. But because the Marvel vs. Capcom team and Disney wanted to push the Avengers so badly, the game's story mode is basically releasing Infinity War so early, throwing in Capcom characters into the mix, and has a plot about the main antagonist, Ultron Sigma, a fusion of both villains via space and reality gems, causing a convergence of both universes. Okay, first off, Ultron Sigma? Yeah, lame. Thor, a freaking immortal, got his butt handed to him and made a slave via the Sigma virus, which I think doesn't sound right, as the Sigma virus should only affect Reploids and not anything organic. Also, if Zero in this game is the X5 Zero, then the Sigma virus should have been beneficial for him, but nothing else is explained after that. Plus, Thanos fighting on the good guy's side, yet strangely enough, he doesn't want the gems. Instead, he sucked the Satsui no Hado out of Ryu. So I guess in a way, he's Ryu's hero, since Ryu himself always had a hard time keeping the Satsui no Hado within him at bay. Oh, and Ultron Sigma has another form called Ultron Omega. Ultron on Sigma's giant head. Yeah, Galactus is more deadly than they are. And just how did they finish them? By having all 6 gems? Yes, but it's not enough. The game also likes to rip off Dragon Ball Z by channeling all their energy onto X. Too bad that the actual Spirit Bomb is copyrighted. And the story is anticlimactic because the reality gem is cracked even though it's not, and the worlds are forever fused until the gem is repaired. Meanwhile, there is no conclusion if Thanos successfully kills Death with the Satsui no Hado. Asinine storytelling! Bad graphics and sound. Yeah, let the following images sink in. When the initial trailers came out, the design of most of the Capcom characters became the butt of everyone's jokes. I mean, look at Chun-Li, Chris, Dante, and Spencer. They look so hideous. They want to push the Marvel Cinematic Universe by also trying to make the Capcom characters look as Marvel realistic as they can. Problem is, they are not Marvel characters. Yes, there's the fact that Akuma, Geese, and Noctis appear in Tekken 7, despite obvious of them being from different IPs, but Bandai Namco took the time to make their models and styles look good for their game, and they succeeded at doing so. Infinite, by contrast, didn't even try, until the backlash from gamers made the team do a complete rush job to fix the issues, and even then, while the models are fixed, the same couldn't be said on how the stages look. The stages in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 are more colorful and full of life, while the color and graphics of Infinite stages look more like an early Xbox or PS2 game. Seriously, Infinite could have done better with the stage designs, while the Marvel Cinematic Universe should have stuck with just the Marvel Cinematic Universe. As for sound, while the Capcom characters reused their old themes from previous games, most of the Marvel characters have brand new themes composed in the style of the previous Marvel movies, such as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Columbia's Ghost Rider movies, or Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. The character themes on the Marvel side are more orchestra-based, whereas the character themes on the Capcom side are more in the lines of dubstep. Both of them I actually kinda dislike. If I want to listen to orchestra-based Marvel music, I much rather have it on the actual Marvel movies because the Marvel theme songs from past games are more upbeat, which I preferred. As for the Capcom side, possibly the only themes I like are the remix of the X vs. Zero match from X5 and 6, and Jetta's theme from Darkstalkers 3. All of the other themes in Infinite really sucked. The underwhelming gameplay. What is the deal with many of the changes? The systems of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and 3 are fine enough in their own way, but people keep saying that the mechanics for Infinite is good? That I would have to disagree. Infinite is back to being 2 vs. 2, you can't perform tag assist like you could in past games, a freeform tag system called Active Switch is utilized, in which players can immediately switch between their team members at any point, even while mid-air or during attack animations, much like Street Fighter X Tekken. This provides players with the abilities to create their own offensive or defensive assist through the tag system and form continuous combos between their two characters, but sadly, it doesn't work for me that well. The game is back to having buttons in which you have one pair of light and heavy attacks, and 2 additional buttons used for swapping characters and activating Infinity Gem powers. But what's really stupid is that the game includes an overly simplified auto combo system, which allows players to repeatedly press the light punch button to automatically perform both ground and air combos. In addition, certain hyper combos can now be activated by simply pressing the 2 heavy attack buttons, as opposed to the specific joystick and button combinations required in previous titles, as if the developers think that we would bum rush the game instead of letting us practice and play the game like a normal Marvel vs. Capcom game. I should also mention that after you defeat Ultron Omega in arcade mode, there is no character ending. Instead, you just get a victory screen. A victory screen! Forget about it! The Infinity Gems themselves. Yes, I know there's stones in the game and in the movies, but I grew up playing Marvel superheroes in 1996, and they're always gems to me, dang it! Rather than the 1996 Marvel game, the colors used are from the movies, which is a minor nitpick of mine, as I always know the colors from the game and the comics. But the real problem is how they are used. At first, I thought they would be like the 1996 game, in which you only use a gem once per match, but in Infinite, they're similar to the Groove Select from the Capcom vs. SNK games, in that you select whichever one gem you would take into battle, instead of fighting for them at random points of the match. Each Infinity Gem bestows one ability that can be activated at any time, known as the Infinity Surge, and it doesn't use up a gem gauge. Some surge moves would include teleportation with a Time Gem, or capture your opponents for a few seconds with a Mind Gem. A second stronger ability called the Infinity Storm can be activated after players fill their Infinity meter at least halfway or above, giving them a significant boost for a limited time, similar to the X Factor from Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I will say that the Infinity Storm versions of the Power, Reality, Time, and Mind Gems are how they function respectively from the 1996 Marvel Superheroes game. The only exceptions will be the Space Gem Storm, in which you trap a character in a box, preventing any sort of assistance, while the Soul Gem Storm is the hero team attack from the first Marvel vs. Capcom, and if the player's teammate is down upon activating the Soul Infinity Storm, the player's teammate will be revived with only 1/5 of HP, which is why you notice that no character disappears at all upon defeating them like in past games. So yeah, I kinda prefer the 1996 mechanics so that the gems have limited usage to make the game fair. The Battle for the Stones tournament. In order to promote the game, Capcom would have their first Battle for the Stones tournament, where there are 6 official Infinity Stone tournaments all over the world that will each represent one of the stones. I'm no tournament player by any means, but even spectators like myself have every right to spot out what things can go wrong in a tournament, and this one is no exception. Whoever is the bearer of the stone can, quote, use its power to turn the tide on the tournament, as the Infinity Stones will grant actual abilities that can be used outside of a typical in-game competition to give players an advantage over their opponent. Either using the Power Gem to allow the Stone Bearer to land the first hit in a match, giving them a guaranteed life advantage over their opponent by executing their first combo of a match, or using the Mind Gem to choose the opponent's characters and gem to use, and should that Stone Bearer lose a match with the gem in hand, that bearer needs to hand it over to the winner of the match.
To be frank, you're basically competing in a fighting game tournament with some degree of legalized cheating. And if that's too insane to accept, then let me put it to you this way. Imagine if you're playing, say, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, while also at the same time playing a card game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic the Gathering, or Vanguard. It doesn't work. It's a freaking disaster. And speaking of disastrous promotions...
Bad marketing. As if the Battle for the Stones, the bland trailers, and hardly any commercials aired weren't bad enough, the Marvel vs. Capcom team would go out of their way to charge $180 for a collector's edition, with only the good things going for it would be the 4 dioramas, while also giving out the so-called Infinity Gems, which are nothing more than ordinary Easter eggs with LED lights on them. I'm not joking, the images of the Infinity Gems straight up lied to you. You're expecting the gem design to be either like the game or be like the initial image given here, not Easter eggs that you could find in a dollar store. I didn't think the Marvel vs. Capcom team would stoop this low and make people pay $180 for a complete package. Shame on them! DBZ Fighters had a better collector's edition, and its $140 price is reasonable enough, given how much time and labor it took to make the Goku statue. Shoot, when Final Fantasy 15 came out, their Ultimate Collector's Edition is about the same price as getting the N Company's SW console, with the whole thing priced at $270. Too high, but reasonable for anybody that are hardcore Final Fantasy fans in the first place, as well as all the labor and all the attention to detail on everything in that collection, with about the only complaint being the Season Pass not being included.
Now this past year, I bought the collector's edition of Sonic Mania for $75, but it was definitely worth an investment. And the reason why is because everything that the Sonic Mania team has done, taking all the time, labor, heart, and soul into getting all this together, from refining the gameplay to giving us really good loot that we can enjoy, especially this statue of Sonic right here. Everything that Sega and the Sonic Mania team have done right, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite did the opposite. But probably the only thing good, as I mentioned, from their collector's edition would be the dioramas and nothing else. Now I really wanted to enjoy this game, everybody. I really do. But everything they removed from MVC3, not to mention having the bad graphics, the gameplay change, the bad sound, the stupid story, as well as the very stupid marketing they've done, I have no choice but to rate this game horribly as I can. Now, if Ryota Nitsuma still is in charge of the game, or rather the team in general, I'm sure he would never let this happen. But given that someone else has taken point over him, it's very much a disaster waiting to happen, or rather, it's a disaster that already has happened. So, my final rating for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, well, you know what? Take it away, Boss Rutan.
Don't you ever do this. Right away you say, okay, I'm sorry. Bang, bang, bang. No, I'm not.
Now this final chapter of the video is about my unscripted thoughts of Marvel vs. Capcom's legacy as a whole, as well as the future of fighting game esports in general. And just for the record, I am far from being done talking about Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. In fact, as you saw in the top of the video, EVO has already announced their lineup for this August event. And if you don't know what EVO is short for Evolution Championship Series, which is basically a fighting game esports tournament that is held every year here in America, and it actually started back in 1996, but it didn't have the EVO name back then. In fact, the EVO name did not stick out until 2002. As you saw in the video, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was not mentioned in the lineup, or rather, it is mentioned, but most likely it's going to be an untelevised side tournament. In fact, I'm going to bring up the EVO lineup again in this video. And just to reiterate my disclaimer from earlier, once again, just to be sure that the N Company doesn't go Super Saiyan ape crazy for mentioning their name or the name of their published games, I will shorten it to the names that you see here, or for a better term, I'm censoring some of the names just to be sure they don't go crazy about it just for mere mention alone. So, as you saw on top of me, there's Super U. And then, below me is Super M for the GC. Yeah, a 17-year-old game actually made it over Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. That's gotta be embarrassing in the MVC team's part. But then there's also other games that also made the lineup, like Tekken 7, yeah, you gotta have Tekken, Guilty Gear Xrd Revelator 2, one of the most controversial choices, which is BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, which is not going to come out in the US until June of this year, which only has players 2 months just to practice the game before EVO. Other games in the lineup, there's also Injustice 2, Street Fighter V, because Street Fighter series is a staple in EVO. And finally, the one game that everybody says is a slow killer of the Marvel Marvel vs. Capcom series, which is Dragon Ball Fighters. Heck, I did a review of it on my previous video before this one. You should go check it out if you haven't checked it out yet. And yeah, like I said, when is Marvel vs. Capcom? Or rather, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite? As this guy, Mr. Wizard, one of the admins of EVO, said that it's going to be on EVO, but as a side tournament. So, it'll still be there, but not televised. And he also said that not many people playing it, and why not? Everything about that game is horrible. So if you haven't checked it out, or rather if you want to listen through what I had to say about the game, just rewind the video back and then come back to this part of the video later.
But since I'm not either man in the EVO video, I'll take a page from Jim Sterling and give the game the maximum sass it deserves and then some.
It's also worth noting that right after the announcement on EVO, that's when Capcom made their statement that they're apologizing to the fans about what had transpired, how Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite came out the way it is, and they're actually issuing an apology stating that they're going to try their best to focus more on fan feedback, what they can do to refine their games a lot better. Which, in my opinion, or rather, half of me is saying that they're actually quite sincere about it. But at the same time, my other half says that the apology is just way too half-baked. Because, and the reason why I say half-baked is because this whole apology should have happened weeks after the release of the game. Not wait until EVO's announcement. Not to mention, I was looking at the Steam charts of Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, and yeah, just about 30 people playing with an overall peak of 3,500 in comparison to how big DBZ Fighters is on Steam. I mean, wow.
Yes, I know about the most recent final round tournament and how Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was actually part of the roster, but even then, 73 entrants is still pathetic in comparison to the 300 plus that you see in both Street Fighter V and DBZ Fighters, as well as the near 300 entrants in Tekken 7.
Marvel vs. Capcom has been a staple on EVO since 2002, with, or rather, actually not 2002, it's actually a staple since 2000, long before the EVO name stuck out. And it's been a staple since then, alongside whatever Street Fighter game they had for their tournament at the time. It's only until this year that Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite will not, or Marvel vs. Capcom in general at all, will not be at EVO this year. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite not making it to EVO really proves that the Marvel vs. Capcom team, not Capcom in general, but the Marvel vs. Capcom team, as well as Disney, yeah, I'm gonna throw them under the bus too. They know their own faults, and rightfully so, they had to pay the price for it. So if they're sincere about trying to refine their games to be a lot better, well, all I can do is wait. But one thing I will say right now, though, is that Capcom in general, they still have my respect. What with the release of Monster Hunter World, or their upcoming releases of Mega Man 11, as well as an updated Mega Man X collection. But when it comes to Marvel vs. Capcom in general, let's just say the MVC team has lost my respect.
It's Marvel, baby? More like Marvel, baby, come back. You can blame it all on them, i.e. Capcom. They were wrong, and they know they can't live without you. Virtual high five if someone knows what song and band I was referencing.
Now the big question is Marvel vs. Capcom overall dead? Well, in my opinion, no, it's not dead. I mean, there are still some people that are defending Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, and more power to you if you are. Yeah, there are some people that are still playing the game. While others that have played Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, they much rather go backwards and just play 3 Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. Heck, so many people that I know would rather go back to playing Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which is understandable as it is an awesome game. So yeah, Marvel vs. Capcom in general is not dead. But the one thing that is dead is there's slim to none chance of making Marvel vs. Capcom mainstream again. And what I mean by that is that supposedly if they're going to make another Marvel vs. Capcom game, hopefully better than Infinite, well, I might pick it up and play it, but whether or not it'll make it mainstream again is all up to interpretation, so a part of me is not even holding my breath at this moment. Well, with all that coming out of my chest, I hope you like everything that I had to say about this retrospective. I can understand if you like Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, and more power to you, but it's just not the game for me. I'm sorry. I mean, there are other games out there. Heck, more fighting games are coming out, like, say, SNK Heroines, Fighting EX Layer, which I can't wait, by the way. Season 2 of King of Fighters 14. Heck, Noctis from Final Fantasy 15 coming out this Tuesday on Tekken 7. And since I already have the season pass for it, I'll definitely get it. Anyway, I hope you like what I had to say on this video, and if you like this video, and if you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to my channel, as well as subscribe to my Facebook page, www.facebook.com/MusashiXReviews. And don't forget to share this video or any other videos that I have on my channel with friends that may be interested in listening to it. So, what other game will I venture on next? Well, all I can say is stay tuned and find out. Until then, this has been Musashi X. I bid you all farewell, take care, and stay tuned, everybody.